Independence. Ghana became the first African state to gain its independence from the British on March 6, 1957, and its success caused a domino effect on many other African states that also gained theirs in the 1960s. Ghana's Nkrumah and other African leaders were in a hurry to improve the living conditions of their fellow nationals. However, they were to learn fast that while they had attained political independence, their economies were still under colonial control, a phenomenon known as neocolonialism. They flew a new flag and sang a new national anthem, but the instruments of wealth were still securely firm in imperial hands. In order to redress this condition, many African governments nationalized privately owned industries and firms and turned them into state-owned enterprises. At the time, this was seen as the surest and fastest way of freeing their economies from imperial control. Without economic empowerment, political independence for African nations was a mere symbolism without any tangible substance. This agency for economic progress was met with wrong priorities on the most part. On the other hand, these were leaders who were in a hurry to improve the living standards of their people, but had no precedents to follow. Wrong policy choices led to most independent states to declare one-party systems of government, with their leaders becoming life presidents. These leaders were expected to serve as long as they were alive. They were thus intolerant to opposition views, and political opponents ended up in jail, more often than not without due process of the law. These faulted economic paths ushered in stagnation and retrogression in some instances. These conditions culminated in political instability as citizens became disillusioned and resulted in military coup d'etats across the breadth and width of the continent. These military coups took away the gains of independence. In fact, during the last 50 years or so, over 67 coup d'etats have happened in over 26 countries in Africa. Notably, the most countries where these coups have taken place are in Francophone Africa. Perhaps what has been even more tragic is that the founding nationalists' original vision and intent of a united Africa as one entity has either been compromised or entirely lost with time. They envisioned Africa's development as based on modern science and technology, and nations that looked out for one another as a brother's keeper. At the turn of independence in Africa, the Cold War between the Western and Eastern blocs was at its peak, and the newly independent African nations were forced to make a choice either to declare allegiance to the East or to the West. Colonization was perpetuated mainly by the Western nations. At independence, most African nations gravitated towards the Eastern Bloc of nations.